Now, I'm sure you're all aware of the extremely grave potential for cultural shock and social disorientation contained in this present situation, if the facts were prematurely and suddenly made public without adequate preparation and conditioning.
B.F. Skinner contends that man in his conceit refuses to accept what he really is, an organism shaped by his environment.
I am absolutely sure that that is all there is in the determination of what I'm doing at this very moment.
With the help of a teaching machine is often dramatically effective. With the machines, the student sees a bit of text in a window. This may be a sentence or two, or an equation in arithmetic. Some small part is missing, and the student must supply it by writing. His response may be the answer to a question or the solution of a problem, but generally it is simply a symbol or word which completes the material he has just. As soon as the student has written his response, he operates the machine and learns immediately. Such immediate knowledge has two principal effects. It leads most rapidly to the formation of correct behavior. The student quickly learns to be right. The student is free of uncertainty or anxiety about his success or failure. His work is pleasurable. He does not have to force himself to study. A classroom in which machines are being used is usually the scene of intense concentration.
The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist.
I think it is time for psychology as a profession and as a science in such fields as psychotherapy, education, developmental psychology, and all the rest. It is time to realize that the science which will be most helpful is not cognitive science searching for the inner mind or self, but selection by consequences represented by behavior analysis. So far as I'm concerned, cognitive science is the creationism of psychology.
I am the architect. I created the matrix. I've been waiting for you. You have many questions, and though the process has altered your consciousness, you remain irrevocably human. Ergo, some of my answers you will understand, and some of them you will not. Concordantly, while your first question may be the most pertinent, you may or may not realize it is also the most irrelevant.
This is your home. You're dead.
Dead? No. All right. You said my back. I'm not dead.
What are you then?
I'm alive.
Then what are you doing here?
Fireproof buildings leave no place for brave firemen. Who keeps the controller honest, or who keeps him benevolent? Let's put it that way. That's the classical term. And I think there's a great mistake here in putting your faith in benevolence. This is a feeling. This is one of those internal possessions, of autonomous men.
Numerous studies show smartphones are shortening our attention spans, stifling creativity, and hurting our ability to retain information. But we're also losing simple skills that were commonplace just decades ago.
One big thing smartphones are doing is hurting interpersonal communication. The students told me they constantly see people fail to recognize nonverbal cues. We're so used to putting up a persona on our Instagram accounts and communicating by text that we're losing our ability to have meaningful conversations in real life.
I'm sure that we are never going to have a complete knowledge of human behavior. We're not going to be able to formulate a relationship.
Huey released this, 4, their most accomplished album. I think their undisputed masterpiece is Hip to Be Square. The song's so catchy, most people probably don't listen to the lyrics. But
his views, leaving no room for basic human rights, are an open invitation for a new form of totalitarianism, and that his philosophy attacks the principles of human freedom and dignity on which our culture is based.
But they should, because it's not just about the pleasures of conformity and the importance of trends. It's also a personal statement about the band itself.
They're not going to survive anyway. The culture is the only thing that will survive. The word fascism, some critic pointed out, surfaces frequently in discussions of my book. Why should I care whether my way of life survives? And the only honest answer, I think, is that you shouldn't. There's no real reason. It's quite surprising to me now, looking back on it, how little the world in general knows about operant conditioning, and I would include many psychologists. It's an extremely advanced, rigorous science. There are hundreds of laboratories throughout the world that are doing this work.
I'm here talking to you so that I can talk to, so that people can know about what this company does, what this company is. Throughout history, you have examples of grossly unethical experiment. It was a grossly unethical experiment because you are, without their consent or awareness, playing with the psychology of an entire nation. You're playing with the psychology of an entire nation in the context of the democratic process.
Of biased and false
news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media publish stories that simply aren't true without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think, and this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
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 It is still possibly true that I give aid and comfort to any way of life which is concerned with improving its practices. Whether I give them an advantage is another thing, and that all depends on whether democracy, what we call a democratic way of life, can indeed take advantage of what we're learning about human behavior. And my book expresses my own concern that the curious history of freedom and dignity as concepts in our thinking about society, whether that has not somehow or other made it impossible for us to take advantage of what we are now discovering about human behavior. And in that case, somebody else will, and they will go down the drain.
But this is one of them. LCF.
It's incorrect to call Cambridge Analytica a purely sort of data science company or an algorithm, company. It is a full-service propaganda machine.
In this world that we live in, there's two main motivating forces, and I tweet about it all the time. It's love or fear.
That's what the literature of freedom has done to us. It's kept us from actually solving our problems in an effective way. We're all controlled all the time. I mean, that's one thing I think that we simply must recognize, and until we do, we're likely to worry about control. But you're controlling me, I'm controlling you, parents control their children, the children control parents, employers control workers, workers control employers. This is going on all the time. You're controlled by the physical environment you live in. You're controlled by the social environment. This is going on and has to be recognized as such.
It prepares a species only for a future that resembles the selecting past. That fault was corrected by a further evolutionary step, the evolution of operant conditioning.
It is not the compassion or the wisdom even of the controller, but the culture which puts him in a position to control. I raised this question in a paper I did at the Joseph P. Kennedy Jr. Foundation for Mental Retardation. They had a big thing in Washington on compassion in the care of the retardate. And my paper was really an attack on the whole program. I don't feel the least bit like a puppet because the whole operant kind of thing is not string pulling to make a figure dance. It is arranging a world in which a person is giving out with behavior. He's doing things which affect that world and which in turn affect him.